Rinaldi clutches the papers with trembling hands. You signed this? She whispers. Adrian gulps. He may have just married a dying Fox girl by accident. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe for more heartwarming HFY stories like this one. The hospital room hummed with gentle machinery, the kind that filled the silence without ever demanding attention. Morning light filtered through narrow windows, casting soft gold across the blankets where Rinaldi lay. Her fox-like ears twitched under the weight of worry, her bright amber eyes flicking between the legal papers in her hands and the human standing beside her bed. Adrian Vale, part-time volunteer, full-time soft heart, stood frozen in place, a pen still loosely dangling from his fingers. He hadn't expected anything unusual during his usual Friday rounds. Maybe reading a book to one of the elderly patients. Maybe refilling water jugs. But definitely not this. Not a terrified, beautiful fox girl staring at him like he had just turned her world upside down. And in a way, he had. The stamped forms in her hands rustled softly as she whispered, "Human, do you understand what this means?" Adrian swallowed. The honest answer was a clear and resounding no. But he had a feeling he was about to learn. Adrian Vale never trusted himself to say no when someone needed help. It was his fatal flaw, according to his sister. His superpower, according to the hospital staff. And a running joke among his friends, who watched him get roped into everything from assembling flat-pack furniture to tutoring night school students for free. That same gentle inability to refuse people was exactly why he began volunteering at the interspecies rehabilitation ward, a place most humans didn't go unless they had a good reason or a strong stomach. Adrian had both a good heart and an even better instinct for noticing when someone was lonely. That was how he met Rinaldi. At the time, she had seemed so small beneath the blankets, her vibrant orange hair spilling around her like a fire that had almost gone out. Her fox ears drooped weakly, and her tail, soft, long, striped with deeper red, lay limp at her side. Her charts labeled her condition as terminally unstable, and her visitor list was tragically blank. So Adrian visited, once at first, then twice, then every day that week. He didn't intend to become her person. He didn't even realize it was happening. But he would talk while changing the water in her pitcher. He'd bring books and read them aloud when she was too weak to lift her head. He'd sit with her during long, quiet afternoons and let her talk about her homeworld in short, breathy sentences. How fox folk feared dying alone. How her people believed souls detached peacefully only when chosen by someone. And how she had no clan left, no comfort rights, no final bond. Adrian didn't know all of that yet, of course. Not at first. He only saw someone afraid of being forgotten. He couldn't allow that. So he smiled, sat down and said, "Well, you've got me for company. Until you get better. Or until you're sick of my jokes." She'd let out a tiny laugh then, one that made her thin shoulders tremble and her ears perk just an inch higher. He still remembered it clearly. But then today happened. He had walked in carrying a cup of tea, the same chamomile blend she liked, the one she said smelled like warm mornings. He had expected a quiet moment, maybe some reading, maybe light conversation about how she was feeling stronger. Instead, she had been handed a stack of documents by a well-meaning but catastrophically uninformed resident doctor who assumed Adrian knew foxfolk customs and that Rinaldi wanted him specifically. Adrian signed anything put in front of him. He always trusted forms to be harmless. He should not have trusted these forms. Not with the giant bold title across the top, Intraspecies Final Wish Bond, Interterran Recognition Act. He had skimmed it, saw the words visitor and consent, assumed it was another routine end-of-life comfort form, and signed where the enthusiastic doctor pointed. Only now, watching Rinaldi's expression morph from awe to panic to something much more fragile, Did he realize? He had just signed a marriage contract, a literal, legally binding one. Rinaldi stared at him, her ears stiff, tail puffed in disbelief. Adrian, this is the wish bond contract. It means you accepted me as your chosen pair, the one to guide me to peace. Her voice trembled. It means we're basically... He felt the world tilt. Married? He croaked. Her eyes widened further. In my culture, yes. Adrian blinked, then blinked again, then softly sat on the nearest chair like a man who had just realized he'd accidentally purchased a planet. But you were sick, he said weakly. I thought it was just permission so I could sit with you longer or something. Rinaldi's hands tightened on the papers. I asked for the bond because I thought I wouldn't live long enough to trouble anyone. It was supposed to be symbolic. My last wish was to not die alone. Her voice cracked on the last word, ears lowering until they nearly folded against her skull. Adrian felt his heart snap clean in half. He exhaled slowly, gently. Yes, he said softly. I signed it, and if it brought you peace, then I don't regret it. She looked up, startled. But now I'm not dying, she whispered. Now it's real. A long, aching silence. Then Adrian, cheeks warm, voice steady with kindness, said the only thing that felt true. Then we'll figure it out. Together. If you'll have me, Rinaldi. Her breath caught, her ears lifted, her tail curled around her legs like she didn't know whether to hide or wag. And for the first time, she whispered his name like it meant something new. Adrian. And the story truly begins. Rinaldi stared at Adrian like the room had tilted sideways and he was the only solid thing left to grab. Together, she repeated softly, as if testing the word. That is a very human answer. Is that a good thing or a you silly human thing? Adrian asked. Her ears flicked, undetermined. The knock on the door spared him from answering. The resident doctor popped his head in, expression bright. Ah, wonderful. You've both had time to process the news, he said. Congratulations on your interspecies union, by the way. Historic stuff. Paperwork's already logged with the treaty office, so you two lovebirds are all set. Adrian choked on nothing. Rinaldi made a tiny squeaking sound. Lovebirds? She echoed, cheeks turning a deep coral beneath green-tinged skin. The doctor, oblivious, continued blithely. We'll keep Rinaldi under observation for one more night. But her vitals are stable enough that she can be discharged tomorrow. As per the bond requirements, she'll need a shared residence with her partner for at least 3 standard months. He flashed Adrian a thumbs up. You'll do great. Then he left, just left. Adrian stared at the door. Ike didn't even get to ask a question. Rinaldi pressed the papers to her chest. Shared residence, she whispered. That means we must live together. Adrian imagined his small apartment with its uneven floors and permanently suspicious plumbing. He imagined Rinaldi there, ears twitching at every pipe groan, tail catching on the rickety coffee table. He imagined the spare futon that technically counted as a second bed if you were charitable. That's doable, he said slowly. My place isn't huge, but it's safe, and it's paid for. And the neighbor only practices bass guitar after noon now, so that's an upgrade. Rinaldi blinked. You offer me shelter without hesitation. You're my... He stopped, the word feeling too heavy and new on his tongue. My bonded partner, I guess. The least I can do is not leave you in a hospital hallway. She looked down, lashes fanning against her cheeks. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I do not want to burden you. You're not, Adrian said immediately. Look, if anyone's a burden, it's that leaky kitchen tap I keep promising I'll fix. You'll just be there to witness me losing my epic battle with plumbing." A small laugh escaped her, soft and startled. Her ears relaxed, then perked again. "I would like to see you battle the tap," she said. "It sounds noble." "Trust me, it's not," Adrian said. "But you're invited anyway." The next day, discharge went less like a dignified medical procedure and more like trying to check out an anxious fox from a very polite hotel. Renali insisted on folding her hospital gown before handing it back. She bowed to every nurse. She thanked the cleaning bot for its steadfast labor in the battlefield of dirt, which made Adrian nearly snort tea through his nose. By the time he guided her down the corridor, she was bundled in clothes the hospital charity closet had cobbled together. A soft, oversized sweater in pale blue, leggings, and socks with tiny cartoon moons on them. Her tail swished nervously behind her, the tip brushing his leg whenever she drifted too close. "Is it very far?" she asked as the elevator descended. "Couple of blocks," Adrian said. "I live close, so I can walk here." "You walked every day?" She looked up at him, surprise widening her eyes. "Even on the rainy mornings?" "Yeah," he said, scratching his neck. "Umbrellas exist, you know. My people believe rain carries gossip from the sky," Renali murmured. "To walk in it for another, that is a romantic gesture." Adrian almost tripped over his own feet. "I just didn't like the idea of you waking up alone," he muttered. The elevator dinged open. Renali stepped out carefully, ears flicking at the rush of sounds in the main lobby. Voices, footsteps, the distant beep of machinery. She stayed close, fingers brushing the back of his hand as if verifying that he remained within reach. Outside, the city greeted them with cool air and the distant buzz of traffic. Renali lifted her face, eyes closing briefly. "It smells different out here," she murmured. "Alive, loud, complicated. That's one way to describe downtown," Adrian agreed. "Come on, watch your step." He kept his pace slow to match her still recovering strength. She watched everything. The street vendors, the hollow ads flickering on building signs, the pigeons that stared at her tail with predatory interest until she glared them into retreat. A block from his building, she stopped abruptly. "Adrian?" "Yeah?" She fidgeted with the sleeve of her sweater. If you decide this bond is too much trouble, you may dissolve it after the 3-moon cycle. There will be no dishonor." He looked at her, at the hopeful resignation in her eyes, at the way her ears drooped like she was already bracing to be set down gently and left somewhere safe. "Renali," he said quietly, "I didn't sign those papers out of pity. I signed because I thought it would help you feel less alone. That hasn't changed." "But now I live," she said. "Even better," he replied. "Means I get to keep you company longer." Her tail gave a betraying little sway. "That is a very dangerous thing to say to a fox," she muttered. "Why?" "We grow attached." "Good," he said, starting to walk again. "So do I." Adrian's apartment building was old enough that its elevator had opinions about functioning daily, so he took the stairs. Renali walked slowly but determinedly, one hand brushing the rail, the other unconsciously clutching the hem of his jacket. When they reached his floor, he paused. "Okay," he said, trying to inject some levity into the moment. "I should warn you, it's not exactly a grand palace. It's more of a charming disaster. I survived a dying ward and bureaucratic bonding documents," she said solemnly. "I can handle your dwelling, Adrian Vale." He unlocked the door and pushed it open. Renali peered inside. Bookshelves lined one wall, overflowing with novels in 3 languages and a scatter of old paperbacks that looked dangerously close to collapse. The sofa had a patch where the fabric had worn thin, but was covered with a bright quilt. A tiny kitchen opened off to the side, with a sink that dripped once every few seconds. Plink, 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 like a guilty conscience. On the far wall, an ancient screen displayed a paused nature documentary, frozen mid-shot on a herd of alien herbivores grazing beneath twin suns. Her ears perked. "You have herds in your home." "That's just a documentary," Adrian said. "They live somewhere with less rent." She stepped in cautiously, tail brushing against the doorframe. "It feels warm." "It feels cluttered," Adrian replied, closing the door behind them. "But thank you." He showed her the tiny bedroom, the futon he'd dragged in from the storage closet, the pile of extra pillows. "You can have the proper bed," he said. "I'll take the futon. It's lumpy in a way that builds character." Renali shook her head immediately. "No, the recovering one should take the less honorable surface. That is tradition." "That sounds like a terrible tradition," he said. "New tradition. Guest gets the comfortable bed." Her ears twitched. "I am not a guest. I am—" She hesitated, cheeks coloring. "Bonded?" he supplied gently. She nodded once. "Then," Adrian said, "my bonded partner gets the comfortable bed. Non-negotiable. I'll file a complaint with the Interstellar Council if they disagree." She let out a small laugh, the tension in her shoulders easing. "You and your complaints," she murmured. As she explored slowly, touching the spines of books, sniffing at a jar of coffee grounds, examining the fridge magnets like they were relics. Adrian watched her with a strange, blooming warmth in his chest. She was here, alive, in his space. His wife, by accident and by desperate wish. He wasn't sure what their future looked like, but one thing was already clear. He would do absolutely everything he could to make sure she never felt like a burden. That evening, after he'd made a simple dinner and she'd attempted to eat noodles with chopsticks. "These are training weapons," she declared. They sat on the couch, a careful distance apart. "Adrian," she said at last, tail curling around her knees, "are you happy?" He blinked. "Right now?" "Yes. With me here." The honest, uncomplicated answer rose in his chest. "Yeah," he said. "I am." Her ears lifted. "Even though you did not plan for a fox wife?" "I didn't plan for most of the good things in my life," he admitted. "They just sort of happened. Like volunteering here. Like meeting you." She looked down, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Then," she whispered, "maybe it is all right if I start planning to stay." Renali really did start planning to stay. Adrian realized this the next morning when he woke up to the sound of soft humming in the kitchen, something melodic, lilting, almost like a lullaby, and discovered Renali perched on a stool with her tail wrapped neatly around the legs, staring in utter fascination at the toaster. She pointed at it the moment she noticed him. It attacked the bread. "It toasted the bread," Adrian corrected gently. "I heard crackling." "That's normal." "And it spit at me." "That's called popping up." She squinted at the toaster like it was a rival warrior. "It is lucky I am still weak from the hospital." He made coffee while she watched with solemn, deep curiosity. Her nose twitched at the smell of roasted beans, ears flicking. "You humans put energy into water," she murmured. "Then drink the water after it has absorbed the energy." "That's one way of describing coffee, yeah?" "It is almost alchemy. That's the nicest thing anyone said about my coffee." When she took her first sip, her tail fluffed dramatically. Oh. She blinked, eyes widening. "This tastes like staying alive." Adrian nearly dropped the mug. "Maybe don't drink too much, it's strong." She nodded seriously, then immediately took another long sip. Later that day, He took her to the corner grocery store so she could choose foods she liked. He had assumed it would be a simple errand. He was wrong. Renali walked through the aisles as if she were cataloging an alien treasure vault. She picked up items, sniffed them, held them to the light, shook them gently as if checking for hidden compartments. "Why is this fruit fuzzy?" she asked, stroking a peach. "That's just how peaches are. Should I groom it?" "No, don't groom the fruit, Renali, no." She put it down reluctantly. Then they passed the snack aisle, and she stopped dead in her tracks, staring at a display of brightly colored bags. "These have flavors," she breathed. "Everything has flavors. These have many." She lifted a bag. Spicy, lava strike. Sweet, hyper citrus burst. And savory, galactic cheddar. You humans put emotions into your food. That's marketing mostly. She placed all three in the basket with reverence. And then, the tragedy. They reached the soda section. The moment she opened the fridge door and heard the faint hiss of carbonation escaping from a bottle someone hadn't fully sealed, she jerked back like she'd been shot. "It hissed at me." That's normal. It is angry water. No. It wants dominance. That's bubbles, Renali. She narrowed her eyes. "I will remember this betrayal." He gently closed the fridge for her. They ended up buying fruit, vegetables, rice, teas, snacks, and one single bottle of soda on the condition that Adrian would tame it before consumption. Over the next week, their lives began blending in gentle, unspoken ways. Renali learned to fold laundry, though she folded everything using Fox culture crease patterns, which turned shirts into tiny squares perfectly stackable like temple offerings. Adrian didn't have the heart to correct her. She also discovered the joy of streaming dramas, especially the ones where humans said dramatic sentences like, "I cannot love you until I defeat my own heart." Renali would gasp at every twist, tail curling with suspense. Adrian, the healer woman, said she hates him, but her tail, her eyebrows lie. "You're getting really into this." "It is culture immersion. I am studying." "Studying romance tropes?" "Yes," she said proudly. "To better understand your world." He didn't question it. She also began leaving tiny gifts for him. Treasures from the world she was exploring, a smooth pebble she found outside, a hand-woven tassel made from leftover yarn, a folded paper fox she crafted during an afternoon of curiosity. And every time he thanked her, her ears would perk like she had just heard her name sung in a melody. One evening, rain pattered softly on the windows. Adrian made tea while Renali sat cross-legged on the couch, tail curled around her feet. She was unusually quiet. He placed the mug into her hands. "Something on your mind?" She stared into the tea. "Adrian, why did you choose me?" He blinked. "I didn't choose you. I didn't know what the papers meant." "Yes," she said. "But before that, you visited me every day, even when I was near fading." Her voice softened. "My own people left me behind, but you kept coming back." Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. "Renali, you were alone. You were scared. I didn't want you to feel like no one cared." "But why me?" "There were many patients." "Because," he said slowly, "you smiled at my terrible jokes, even when you were hooked up to half the hospital. Because you listened when I talked about my day. Because you always asked how I was feeling, even when you were the one who needed support. Because you mattered." He shrugged. "You still do." Her eyes shone, golden and soft. "You speak of me as if I was never a burden." "You never were." She inhaled, tail tightening slightly. "Then, may I continue to stay? Even after the moon cycle ends?" He didn't even hesitate. "I want you to," he said. Her ears lifted slowly, delicately, like sunrise breaking. I think I'm growing attached, she whispered. He smiled gently. Good. Her tail swayed once, shy and hopeful. Then, I will keep planning. Renali did keep planning. Some of her plans made sense. Some were wildly optimistic. The first hint came when Adrian walked into the living room one morning to find her crouched on the floor, staring at his heater unit with the intensity of a general planning siege warfare. Everything okay? She didn't look up. Your heat box is malfunctioning. It does that, he said. Old building. It growls. That's the fan. It groans. That's the motor. It makes the sound of a dying beast giving up on its dreams. Yeah, it does that too. She exhaled gravely. I attempted to make peace with it. You tried to... What? She lifted a small dish of fruit slices like a peace offering. My people soothe distressed den holes with treats. That's adorable, he said. But heaters aren't alive. Her ears flattened in stubborn disbelief. This one is. When the heater rattled loudly a moment later, she hissed and ducked behind him like he was a shield. He tried not to laugh, failed miserably. Their sleeping arrangement was another quiet comedy of manners. Adrian slept on the futon, which was lumpy in a way that absolutely did build character, and mild back pain. Renali insisted repeatedly that she should sleep on it instead. But Adrian always shut that idea down. One night, around 3 in the morning, he woke up to find a warm weight curled beside him. A tail. Specifically, Renali's tail. It was wrapped around his waist like a fuzzy seatbelt. He blinked blearily. Renali? A small, embarrassed squeak came from the dark. It has instincts. Your tail has instincts? It protects sleeping partners, she whispered, mortified. I did not give it permission. Well, it's okay, he said gently. Kind of comforting, actually. Her tail tightened a little, not possessively, more shyly. It believes you are mine, she admitted into the darkness. It is enthusiastic. He swallowed, suddenly very awake. Is that a cultural thing, or? Yes. And a personal thing, or? Silence. Then softly, also yes. Before he could respond, she scrambled back to her own bed, tail fluffed to double size. You saw nothing, she declared. Uh-huh. Erase it from your memory. I'll try. You are a terrible liar. Over the following days, her behavior changed in tiny ways that Adrian tried very hard not to read too much into. Her ears would turn toward him, no matter where he was in the apartment. She started brewing tea before he woke up, humming while she set a cup next to his favorite chair. She began brushing her hair in the hallway mirror, but always craned subtly to watch his reflection behind her. And sometimes, only sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she touched the ring the hospital had provided for the bond, her thumb tracing the metal with a soft, wondering expression. But her growing affection wasn't the only shift. Her confidence returned. One afternoon, she helped an elderly neighbor carry groceries up the stairs. Another day, she bravely confronted the tiny but relentless bird, a pigeon, that kept staring at their balcony. She even managed to groom the kitchen sponge until it had proper status again. Adrian found himself smiling constantly. The apartment felt brighter, lived in, shared. One evening, after cleaning up from dinner, she approached him with her ears angled in a careful, vulnerable way. Adrian, she said, may I ask something delicate? Of course. She wrung her hands. Do humans grow attached slowly or suddenly? He blinked. Both, I guess. Depends on the person. She nodded thoughtfully. I am learning your ways, but I worry. Her tail coiled shyly at her ankles. I feel something growing inside me, and I do not know if I should hide it or let it bloom. He swallowed. Renali, you don't have to hide anything from me. Her breath hitched, ears lifting, tail trembling faintly. Then she whispered, barely audible. Then I think I am blooming. The moment Renali whispered, I think I am blooming, the world seemed to pause, softly, delicately, like the universe itself held its breath. Adrian felt the words settle in his chest with surprising warmth, not frightening, not overwhelming, just real. But before he could answer, Renali suddenly stepped back, her tail fluffing in alarm as though she had revealed a deeply guarded secret. Forget I said that, she blurted, ears flattening. I am still recovering. My thoughts are not orderly. I should not burden you with blooming. Hey, he said, reaching out gently. You're not... But she retreated another step. Adrian, you don't understand. Blooming is... It is a state of the heart, a beginning that only goes forward. That sounds like something good, he said softly. It is, she exclaimed, then winced, pacing in a tiny circle. But it is dangerous for you, for me, if I am wrong. She wrung her hands anxiously. Humans love with logic. You love with slow certainty, or heartbreak. I do not know which way you walk. That's not really fair. And fox folk love like flame, she continued, golden eyes shiny and wide. Quickly, completely, without half measures. Once we bloom, we choose. And I worry that perhaps I am choosing too fast, or choosing alone. He moved toward her cautiously. Renali, her voice broke. I don't want to frighten you away. Why would that frighten me? Because, she said, tail curling in on itself. I heard you. Heard me? What? She swallowed. You told your neighbor yesterday that you never asked for any of this. Adrian froze. He had said that, but not about her, not even close. He cleared his throat. Okay, we need to talk about that. Renali hugged her arms protectively across her chest. It is all right. I understand. Humans do not like fate choosing for them. Her voice wavered. I know I came into your life suddenly, like a stranded creature. It makes sense you would want an exit. Renali, I wasn't talking about you. She blinked. What? I was talking about my landlord wanting to raise rent again. She stared, then blinked, then stared harder. But... Her tail paused mid-sway. Then why did you sigh so dramatically? Because he wants to raise it again, Renali. She processed this slowly. Oh. He took another step closer, careful, gentle. You really thought I wanted out? From this? From you? Her ears drooped. It made sense. You had a life before I fell into it. And sometimes I worry I am disordering your life too much. You're reordering it, he said truthfully. In good ways. But the bond contract, her voice grew faint. I thought perhaps you were fulfilling it out of obligation, staying out of pity. That word hit him like ice water. He stepped forward, too quickly for her to hide behind her tail this time, and placed his hands lightly on her upper arms. Her breath hitched, eyes widening as if she hadn't expected him to touch her so gently. Renali, look at me. She did, and he made sure his voice stayed steady, warm, honest. I don't do anything out of pity, especially not with you. Her lips parted. Adrian, you matter to me, he continued, squeezing her arms softly. Not because of the bond, not because you were sick, not because of any obligation. You matter because you're you, because you make my apartment feel like a home, because you try to fight my heater, because you curl your tail around me when you sleep. Yes, I know you do that. She made an embarrassing noise. And because when you smile, it feels like something bright is settling into my life that wasn't there before. She swallowed hard. You noticed. How could I not? Rinaldi trembled under his hands, small, subtle, like she was holding herself together while her heart swelled too big for her chest. I thought I was too much, she whispered. Too fast. Too Fox. You're exactly right, Adrian said. Exactly the way you're meant to be. She closed her eyes, voice barely a breath. But what if I fall for you completely? His answer came instantly. Then I'll catch you. She sucked in a sharp breath, eyes snapping open. Her ears lifted, tail slowly unfurling from its tight coil. You would? She murmured. Yes. Even though you never asked for me? He smiled softly. Some of the best things in my life came without asking. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Rinaldi looked down at the papers still tucked into her sweater, the bond documents she had kept like a protective shield ever since leaving the hospital. Her voice wavered. I prepared annulment papers, she admitted, in case you wish to be free. Adrian felt something twist painfully in his chest. Rinaldi. She lifted them slowly, trembling. I only wanted to do what was right. I thought you deserved a choice you never had, and I did not want to be the cause of your unhappiness. He shook his head, gently taking the papers from her hands. I don't want to annul anything, he said. Not now, not later. Her breath caught. Then, what do you want? He met her gaze, steady, warm, grounding. You. Her hands flew to her mouth, eyes shining with stunned softness. Adrian, I choose you, he said. Not because I signed something by accident, not because you needed someone, but because I want you in my life. Her tail slowly, hesitantly, began to sway. Then, she whispered, voice trembling with hope. May I bloom? Safely? He cupped her cheek gently. Yes. Her ears fluttered, overwhelmed emotion washing through her features. And for the first time, she let herself believe him. Rinaldi didn't move at first. She stood perfectly still, his hand warm against her cheek, her golden eyes wide and shimmering like she was afraid to breathe too hard and break whatever fragile magic had suddenly settled between them. Adrian, she whispered, voice cracking under emotion she couldn't hide. He brushed his thumb in a soft arc along her cheek. Hey, I'm right here. Her breath wavered. But if I bloom, if I truly bloom, there is no going back. Not for me, not for Fox kind. Once my heart chooses, it is chosen. Her hands rose, trembling. What if it is too much for you? It's not, he said softly. You're not. But humans are so slow, she murmured, stepping closer without realizing. You take time. You need time. And I move like flame. I feel like flame. I burn quickly. Her ears folded shyly. I do not want to scorch you. He smiled gently. I'm not afraid of a little warmth. She inhaled, trembling. I want so much to believe that. Then believe it. Her tail curled around her legs as though bracing her. But I am not subtle, Adrian Vale. When I love, I show it. I cling, I touch, I make dens, I groom. I wrap my tail around my partner, I hover, I worry, I want to be near, I want... She broke off, mortified at her own confession. Adrian stepped closer, hands sliding to rest lightly on her upper arms, gently guiding her out of her spiral. Rinaldi, he murmured. Everything you just described sounds wonderful. She blinked, stunned. You think so? I like the way you show affection, he said honestly. I like that you care loudly. I like that you're not afraid to feel. No human has ever said that, she whispered. Not about my nature. Well, then maybe humans are missing out. Her heart pulsed visibly in her throat, her tail lifting little by little, betraying hope she could no longer hide. He took her hands. She gasped, soft and instinctive, as though the simple act of their fingers intertwining unlocked something deep and long held within her. "Adrian," she breathed, "you do not know what you are doing to me." "I think I do," he whispered back. She stared at him, eyes glossy and open, emotions swirling too fast for her to mask. "You would truly catch me?" she asked, voice barely above a breath. "If I fall?" "I already am," he said. "So fall." Her ears trembled, her tail stilled. She swallowed hard. Then she stepped closer. Close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath brush his chin. Close enough that her tail slowly curled behind him in a loose, instinctive embrace. Her voice came out fragile, frightened, full of longing. "Adrian, may I?" He leaned in just enough to answer without words. Her lips parted in a tiny, startled inhale. "Oh." Then he whispered, "Yeah, you can." Her eyes fluttered shut, not dramatically, not theatrically, but in a small, trembling way that spoke of trust. The first brush of her lips was feather-light, barely there, a question more than a kiss. She pulled back an inch, breath shaking. "Is this acceptable?" He smiled, thumb brushing her cheek again. "More than." And this time, she kissed him fully. Soft, careful, warm. Her hands slid up to his chest, gripping gently as though anchoring herself. Her tail wrapped around his waist with instinctive tenderness, drawing him closer. Her ears folded, then lifted, then folded again in flustered, uncontainable joy. She made the tiniest sound, half sigh, half wonder, as she deepened it by just a breath. Not demanding, not overwhelming, just full of everything she had held back for so long. When they finally parted, she rested her forehead against his, breathing unevenly. I did not mean to kiss you so fiercely," she whispered. "You didn't," he murmured. "That was perfect." She blushed. "I think I love you." He laughed softly, a warm, astonished exhale that made her ears perk. "Yeah," he said, brushing his nose to hers. "I think I love you too." Renali's tail puffed in delighted disbelief. "I am blooming," she whispered. "Bloom," he said. "I'm right here." Her hand slid up to cradle his jaw as if memorizing the moment. "You have no idea how long I dreamed of being chosen." "You are," he murmured. "Every day. I choose you." Her eyes glistened with a joy so bright it made his chest ache. "Then," she whispered, voice trembling with happiness, "kiss me again." He did, this time without hesitation, this time with warmth blooming between them, this time with the certainty she had been afraid to hope for, and the certainty he had finally embraced. Their bond was no longer a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was becoming something real, something chosen, something theirs. The second kiss ended slowly, like a lantern dimming, not because either of them wanted it to, but because Renali broke away with a tiny, overwhelmed gasp and immediately covered her face with both hands. "Oh, stars," she whispered through her fingers. Oh no, I did not mean to make sounds." Adrian smiled softly. "You're allowed to make sounds." "No," she insisted, ears plastered flat. "That was a fox noise. It was instinctive. It was embarrassing. I am never making that sound again." "You probably will." "I refuse." "You definitely will." She peeked through her fingers, mortified. "Adrian Vale, you are terrible. And you like me anyway." She lowered her hands slowly, her cheeks flushed a deep coral. "Yes, unfortunately for my dignity." He chuckled, and she swatted his shoulder in the gentlest, most harmless attempt at offense the galaxy had ever seen. But the moment passed, and the air between them shifted into something quieter, softer, a warm afterglow of everything they had just confessed. Renali's tail drifted upward, brushing along his arm in a hesitant sweep. "Adrian, may I?" He blinked. "May you? What?" She stepped closer and moved behind him, placing her hands lightly on his shoulders. "I wish to groom you," she said simply. Adrian felt his brain temporarily blue screen. "Groom? It is how fox kind show bond. Care. Devotion." Her voice softened. "It is how we calm our hearts, and how we thank a partner for choosing us." She tugged him gently toward the couch. He sat. She kneeled behind him, tail curled around her legs, and reached forward with careful fingers, barely touching at first, as though asking permission with each movement. Her nails were soft, rounded, more like gentle tips than claws. She brushed them through his hair with slow, feather-light strokes. Adrian exhaled without meaning to. "That feels really nice." Renali's ears lifted in delighted pride. "I practiced on a brush." "You practiced grooming? A brush?" "Yes," she said, utterly serious. "I wanted you to feel cared for properly." That sentence went straight to his heart and melted it like butter on a warm pan. She continued working through his hair, smoothing, combing, carding her fingers through it carefully. Every now and then, she paused to make quiet, pleased hums, emotion escaping through her voice despite her best efforts to stay composed. "This helps regulate foxkind nerves," she murmured. "It slows our heartbeats. It bonds us. And it tells the other person." She trailed off. "Tells them what?" he asked softly. "That we feel safe with them," she whispered. Adrian felt warmth spread through his chest. Steady, grounding, real. "You're safe with me, Renali." "I know," she said, her voice trembling even as her hand stayed steady in his hair. "That is why I bloom. I wanted you to know it, not just from my words, but from my hands." She slid her fingers down to the nape of his neck and brushed lightly across his skin. He shivered. "Oh," she said softly, almost to herself. "Humans have responses. Good. Good. You're very proud of yourself right now, aren't you?" "Extremely." He couldn't help the laugh that escaped him, warm, helpless, content. After a few more minutes, she slid around to sit beside him. Her hands fell into her lap, but her tail wrapped around his waist like it had a mind of its own. She looked up at him shyly. "Did I do well?" "Renali," he said honestly, "I've never been groomed in my life, but I'm pretty sure nothing will ever top that." She beamed, actually beamed, and leaned into him, head resting lightly on his shoulder, tail still looped around him like a soft, warm tether. "Then," she whispered, "I wish to do it again, many times, if you want." "I want." She let out a tiny, joyful trill, a sound halfway between a purr and a heartbeat, and snuggled closer. In the quiet comfort of shared warmth, the last of their uncertainties fell away. The bond wasn't symbolic anymore. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't a mistake or a duty. It was chosen. By both of them. Fully. And as Renali drifted into a soft half-doze against him, Adrian wrapped an arm around her shoulders and thought, with a swelling tenderness, "This feels like something that could last." Renali woke curled against him, blinking slowly, golden eyes adjusting to the morning light that streamed through the blinds. Her tail had migrated in the night, wrapping over his hip, across his stomach, and partially up his chest like some loyal, fuzzy guardian serpent. The moment she realized this, her ears flared in horrified alarm. "No, this tail betrays me. Adrian, do not look." He laughed through sleepy breath. "It's fine. Honestly, it's cute." She hid under the blanket. It is not cute. It is territorial. You're welcome to be territorial. A muffled groan escaped from beneath the blanket. Do not say things like that first thing in the morning. He lifted the corner of the blanket. We have somewhere to be today. She peeked out, wary. Somewhere intimidating? No. A place you know very well. Her ears straightened. The hospital? Yeah. She swallowed. To return as a living one. It'll be good, he said gently. Closure. Renali exhaled shakily. I trust you. Yes. Let us go. The city air was crisp, carrying the sense of street vendors and bakeries opening for early customers. Renali stayed close, occasionally brushing against his arm, as though grounding herself in his presence. Many steps, she murmured quietly as they approached the familiar building. I did not expect to take these steps again while breathing. You're not just breathing, Adrian said. You're thriving. She paused at the sliding doors, ears fluttering. But what if they see me and think I should still be lying down? He smiled. Then you'll show them you walked in here on your own 2 feet. Her tail curled shyly. With you beside me. Always. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded with renewed courage. Together, they stepped inside. The moment the staff saw her, the reaction was immediate. Nurse Sorrel, look. Oh, my stars, Renali. She's up and walking. She looks wonderful. Adrian, did you do this? I did none of the medical parts, he clarified, nearly tripping as Renali bowed politely at every admirer. She healed. I just provided snacks and moral support. Renali held her hands together. Your support prevented the fading. Adrian flushed. I'm pretty sure the medicine did most of it. No, she said softly. You stayed. Nurse Sorrel rushed forward first, practically squeezing both of them in a hug. You sweet girl. Look at you. You're glowing. Renali's blush was immediate and total. It is the coffee. No, the nurse corrected. It's joy. Renali froze. Joy? She turned to Adrian slowly, as if rediscovering something she'd forgotten. Yes, she whispered. I suppose it is. They walked down the hallway toward the room she once inhabited. Each step slowed Renali's breath, but Adrian held her hand without pressing or pulling. At the doorway, she paused. The bed was freshly made, empty. The machines had been reassigned. There was no sign she had ever been there, no trace of the fragile girl he once sat beside. It looks smaller, she murmured. You got stronger, Adrian replied. She stepped inside, kneeling gently beside the bed, fingertips brushing the place where pillows once supported her. I thought this bed was going to be the last thing I touched on this world, she whispered. The last place I thought anything of mine would remain. He knelt beside her, but it wasn't. She looked up, eyes wet and shining. Because of you. He shook his head softly. Because you fought, because you held on. She bit her lip. Adrian, may I tell you something I was too afraid to say before? Always. When I was dying, I wished, not for life or comfort or even peace. Her tail curled around her legs. I wished for someone, anyone, to choose me, even if only symbolically. He felt his chest clench gently. Renali. But then you came, she whispered, voice trembling. And you read to me. And you talked to me. And you noticed me when no one else did. She looked at the empty bed again. I made my wish. And then you walked through that door. Adrian took her hands, both trembling, and held them steadily. I didn't choose you because you were dying, he said. I choose you because you're you, because you brighten everything around you, because you're kind, because you're strong, because you're brave enough to love openly. She shook her head tearfully. Brave? Adrian, I was terrified. I know, he said softly, but you still let yourself bloom. A tear fell down her cheek. You caught me, she whispered. He brushed the tear away with his thumb. Every time. Then, without hesitation, she leaned into him, arms sliding around his waist, head pressing against his chest. Not desperate, not fragile, just full of warmth. I want to leave this place with you, she murmured, and never return as a patient again. You won't, he whispered, wrapping his arms around her. You're coming home. She breathed in deeply, her tail slowly curling around both of them. Home, she repeated softly, as if tasting it. Yes. She smiled against his chest, voice gentle and full of strength he hadn't seen in her before. Then let us go, my chosen one. Adrian felt heat rise in his cheeks, but it was a warm, good kind of heat. Let's go, he said. Hand in hand, they stepped out of the room and left it behind, and neither looked back. Life didn't change overnight. It changed in soft ways, like the glow of a morning sun that warms the room before you realize it's risen. Renali settled into Adrian's apartment as though she had been meant to be there all along. Not as a patient, not as an obligation, as a partner, as someone building a future whisper by whisper, gesture by gesture, morning by morning. Some days she reorganized his kitchen cabinets based on logical Fox hierarchy, which he wasn't entirely sure matched human logic, but looked charming regardless. Some days he found her curled up by the window, tail wrapped around her knees, watching the sunrise with a look of quiet awe. My people say every dawn is a fresh breath of the universe, she told him one morning. But it feels different here. It feels like beginning again. He made her tea in her favorite cup, the one covered in tiny stars, and she accepted it with a soft smile that warmed places in him he didn't know needed warmth. One evening, he came home from work to find their small living room transformed. Tiny paper lanterns, handmade, he could tell, were placed carefully along the shelves. A woven mat lay on the floor. The faint scent of honey fruit incense lingered in the air, curling gently toward him as he stepped inside. Rhinali, he called, confused. She appeared from the hallway wearing the soft blue sweater she'd claimed as her favorite, her hair brushed out and shimmering. Her tail swayed slowly, not anxious, but purposeful, ceremonial. He blinked. Did I forget an anniversary already? Because I swear we have none yet. She laughed, light, musical. No, my heart, not anniversary. She held something behind her back. This is Fox tradition. He raised an eyebrow. You're not going to groom the furniture again, right? That was one time, and the furniture enjoyed it. Right. She stepped closer, eyes soft and shining. Our bond may have begun unexpectedly, she said softly, but Fox kind always marks the moment we choose to continue it. She revealed what she'd been hiding. A blanket woven by hand. Not a small one, but a full, warm, soft creation, made from threads of amber, russet, cream, and deep sky blue. The colors flowed into each other, forming gentle patterns reminiscent of fox dens, forest sunsets, and tiny swirling constellations. Adrian's breath caught. Renali, did you make this? Yes. She held it out with both hands. This is a nest blanket. In my culture, we give it to the one we choose to share a future with. He swallowed, emotion rising warm and overwhelming in his chest. It's beautiful. She blushed. I hoped. You might want to make a nest with me. Not today, not tomorrow, not rushed. Her ears lowered shyly. Just someday, in our time. He took the blanket gently from her hands, running his fingers across the soft threads, each one placed with care, with intention, with love. Renali, he murmured, This is perfect. She let out a tiny trill of relief. Then you accept? Of course I accept. He smiled. I want a future with you too. Her tail lifted in a slow, spiraling arc of joy. Then come, she said softly, her voice almost a purr. We must try it. They sat together on the couch, unfolding the blanket across their laps. Renali curled close, naturally, instinctively, her head resting on his shoulder as though the space had been built for her. The blanket enveloped them in warmth, softness, and the quiet intimacy of two people who had found each other by accident, but stayed by choice. You know, Adrian murmured, if someone told me 6 months ago that I'd be sharing a nest blanket with a fox girl, I would have assumed I was sleep-deprived. You were, she said helpfully. Not the point. She giggled and tucked herself closer. You complain, but you like it. I do, he admitted. Silence settled comfortably. Not an empty one. No awkwardness, no uncertainty. Just the quiet of people who belonged. Renali traced a small pattern on the blanket with one fingertip. In fox tradition, this blanket means I hope to build a life with you. A den. A place to rest and grow and laugh. Sounds perfect, Adrian said. She looked up, eyes glowing like soft lanterns. Do you truly mean that? With everything I've got? Her smile. It was radiant. She nuzzled her cheek gently against his shoulder, a fox gesture, tender and full of affection. Adrian Vale, she whispered, my dying wish was to be chosen, to not fade alone. He wrapped the blanket and his arm around her. You're not alone. Not anymore. And now, she said, voice trembling with new hope. Now I think I wish for something else. He brushed his fingers through her hair. What's that? She leaned into him fully, tail winding around his waist like a promise. A living wish. A living wish? He echoed softly. Yes. Her voice was no louder than a breath. A wish for all the days ahead. With you. He felt his chest tighten with emotion. Renali? She closed her eyes, smiling. My chosen one. My heart. My home. He kissed the top of her head. And my partner, he whispered. Now and tomorrow. She held on to him, warmth radiating between them beneath the shared blanket. And as the stars rose outside the window, casting silver over the small apartment they were turning into a shared world, Renali whispered, Then let us dream together. And Adrian whispered back, Always. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more wholesome sci-fi romance adventures.